Welcome to Lady E's Dark Tales. In tonight's Halloween Spine Chiller, we delve into the shadowy depths of the Appalachian wilderness, where a park ranger's routine patrol turns into a heart-pounding encounter with the unknown. Grab your favorite blanket, dim the lights, and prepare to venture into the eerie forest night. But beware, for once you enter these woods, you may never see things the same way again. Settle in for a tale of primal fear and supernatural mystery in a story I call The Midnight Howl.
You know that feeling when you're alone in the woods and you hear a twig snap in the distance? That brief moment when your heart skips a beat, but then you laugh it off, telling yourself it's just a squirrel or a raccoon. I used to do that too. I used to believe that the most dangerous things in these mountains were the bears and the occasional ornery moose. But now I know better. And let me tell you, ignorance truly was bliss. My name's Ethan Clark. I'm 37 now, but this all went down back in 2010 when I was working as a park ranger in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. It was Halloween night, and I was starting my night shift. Now, I used to love these solitary patrols, just me and the wilderness. But lately, things had been different. You see, I'd just gone through a rough divorce. Nancy, my ex-wife, she couldn't handle the long hours and the isolation that came with my job. Can't say I blame her, really. So, there I was, throwing myself into work, trying to forget about the empty house waiting for me at the end of each shift. That particular night, the air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and decaying leaves. A full moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows through the trees. As I started my rounds, I couldn't help but think about the Rangers losing the World Series just a few days before. Baseball had always been our thing, Nancy and me. We'd watch every game together, but now, well, I guess some things just aren't meant to last. I shook off the melancholy and focused on my job. The trails were quiet, most hikers having cleared out before nightfall. That's when I noticed something odd. Claw marks on several trees, way too high up to be from any black bear I'd ever seen. My first instinct was to rationalize it. Maybe a particularly large bear, but something in my gut told me this was different. As I examined the marks, a howl echoed through the mountains. Now, I'd heard plenty of coyotes and the occasional wolf in my time, but this was something else entirely. It was deeper, more guttural, and it sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the October air. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just on edge because of the holiday. Halloween always brought out the crazies, even in the backwoods. I remembered how, just last year, we'd had to rescue a group of college kids who'd gone looking for the ghost of Appalachia or some such nonsense. But this felt different, more real somehow. As I continued my patrol, the shadows seemed to grow longer, the silence more oppressive. Every snapping twig made me jump. I found myself thinking about Jake, my old partner, who'd been killed in a bear attack 5 years back. We'd been cocky then, thought we knew everything about these woods. Jake's death had taught me a harsh lesson about respecting the wild. It was nearing midnight when I stumbled upon the campsite. At first I thought some careless campers had left a mess, but as I got closer, my blood ran cold. The tents were shredded, not just torn down, but ripped apart like tissue paper. Belongings were scattered everywhere, and there were dark stains on the ground that looked disturbingly like blood. My training kicked in, and I reached for my radio to call for backup. But when I keyed the mic, all I got was static. I tried my cell phone next, no signal. That's when the reality of my situation started to sink in. I was alone, in the dark, with no way to call for help. I swept my flashlight around the campsite, looking for any signs of the campers. That's when I saw them, paw prints in the soft mud near the edge of the clearing. But these weren't like any prints I'd ever seen before. They were massive, easily twice the size of a bear's, with clear claw marks at the tips. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. There had been rumors, of course, old stories passed down by the locals about something living in these mountains. Something that wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite man. I'd always dismissed them as campfire tales meant to scare tourists. But standing there, in that destroyed campsite, with those impossible tracks in front of me and the memory of that bone-chilling howl, I started to wonder if there might be some truth to those stories after all. As if in answer to my thoughts, another howl split the night air, closer this time, much closer, and I knew, with a certainty that shook me to my core, that whatever had done this was still out there, and it was coming back. My heart pounding, I backed away from the campsite. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but years of training held me in place. I had a job to do. People might be hurt, but as I stood there, paralyzed by indecision, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The forest had gone eerily quiet. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just the sound of my own ragged breathing. I swept my flashlight around, its beam cutting through the darkness. That's when I saw them. Two glowing eyes reflecting the light, set high above the ground. Too high to be a bear, too big to be a wolf. I'd like to say I stood my ground, that I faced whatever it was head on. But the truth is, I ran, wouldn't you? I took off down the trail, my boots pounding against the earth, branches whipping at my face. I could hear it behind me, crashing through the underbrush. It was fast, too fast. As I ran, my mind raced back to all those times I dismissed the local legends. The old-timers in town were always going on about the Dogman, some half-dog, half-human creature that supposedly roamed these mountains. I'd always laughed it off, chalked it up to too much moonshine and an overactive imagination. Now I wasn't so sure. I don't know how long I ran. Time seemed to stretch and warp, each second feeling like an eternity. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but fear kept me going. I thought about Nancy, about how one of our last arguments had been about me working on the holidays. If I'd known it might be my last, well, I guess hindsight's always 20/20, isn't it? Finally, I burst out of the tree line into a small clearing. In the center stood the old fire tower, a relic from the days before satellite monitoring. It was our backup communication hub, equipped with a radio powerful enough to reach the outside world. Safety. If I could just reach it. I sprinted across the clearing, fumbling for my keys. I scrambled up the stairs, taking them two at a time, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Behind me, I heard that bone-chilling howl again, closer than ever. My hands shook as I tried to fit the key into the lock. Have you ever tried to unlock a door while being chased by something straight out of your worst nightmares? Let me tell you, it's not easy. After what felt like hours, the lock finally clicked. I threw myself inside, slamming the door shut just as something heavy crashed against it. The whole tower shook with the impact. With my heart pounding, I lunged for the radio. My hands shook violently as I grappled with the controls, desperately trying to establish contact. Panic surged through me as I frantically identified myself and my location, my voice cracking with urgency. The words tumbled out in a frenzied rush. I could only muster out an attack, possible casualties, and the dire need for immediate assistance. I could barely hear my own voice over the thundering of my pulse in my ears as I repeated the distress call, praying someone would arrive before it was too late. The radio crackled and went dead. Outside, the wind had picked up, howling around the tower. But underneath that sound was something else, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I backed away from the windows, my eyes darting from one to the next. The moon had disappeared behind thick clouds, plunging the world outside into darkness. But in that darkness, something moved, something big. A massive shape launched itself at the tower. The whole structure swayed with the impact. Glass shattered as a clawed hand smashed through one of the windows. I caught a glimpse of matted fur, of teeth gleaming in the dim light. Have you ever had a moment where time seems to stop? Where your whole life flashes before your eyes? That's what happened to me right then. I thought about my parents, about Nancy, about all the things I'd never get to do or say. And as that creature tried to force its way into my sanctuary, I realized something. I didn't want to die, not here, not like this. With strength born of desperation, I grabbed the fire axe from its mount on the wall. As the Dogman, because what else could I call it, finally broke through the window, I raised the axe high. It was me or the beast, and I sure as hell wasn't going down without a fight. Time slowed to a crawl as the Dogman lunged through the shattered window. Its eyes gleamed with an almost human intelligence, but there was nothing human about its massive, fur-covered body or the razor-sharp claws that reached for me. In that moment, all my training, all my years in the wilderness seemed to evaporate. I swung the axe with all my might. It connected with a sickening thud, burying itself in the creature's shoulder. The Dogman let out a roar of pain and fury that shook the entire tower. I tried to wrench the axe free, but it was stuck fast. The creature's massive paw swung at me, catching me across the chest. I felt the air leave my lungs as I was thrown against the far wall. Pain exploded through my body. As I struggled to breathe, a coppery taste filled my mouth. Blood. Through blurred vision, I saw the Dogman struggling with the axe, trying to pull it from its flesh. I had seconds, maybe less, before it freed itself and came for me again. My eyes darted around the room, desperately searching for anything I could use as a weapon. That's when I saw it, the flare gun. Standard equipment for every fire tower, meant to signal for help in emergencies. Well, if this wasn't an emergency, I didn't know what was. I lunged for the gun, my fingers closing around its grip just as the Dogman freed itself from the axe. It turned towards me, eyes blazing with fury. I raised the flare gun, aiming straight at its face. Have you ever heard the sound a creature makes when it's caught between rage and fear? It's not something you forget. As the Dogman saw the gun, it hesitated for just a moment. That was all I needed. I pulled the trigger, the flare erupted from the barrel, a blazing streak of red that caught the Dogman right between the eyes. The creature howled in agony, reeling backwards. In its pain and confusion, it stumbled, crashing through the weakened wall of the tower. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then I heard it, the sickening crunch of a body hitting the ground far below. I don't know how long I sat there, trembling, waiting for the creature to come back. Minutes, hours. Eventually, I realized that the sky outside was beginning to lighten. Dawn was breaking. When the search and rescue team finally found me, I was still in the tower, clutching the empty flare gun. They had to pry it from my fingers. I tried to tell them about the Dogman, about the destroyed campsite, about everything that had happened. But as the words left my mouth, I could see the disbelief in their eyes. They found no body at the base of the tower, no giant paw prints, no evidence of the nightmare I'd lived through. The official report cited a bear attack, with my hallucinations attributed to fear and hypothermia. But I know what I saw, what I fought, and it changed me in ways I'm still trying to understand. I quit my job as a ranger not long after that night. Couldn't bear to go back into those woods. Nancy and I tried to reconcile, but the man she knew was gone. How do you explain to someone that the world is bigger, stranger, and more dangerous than they could ever imagine? These days, I spend a lot of time researching, digging through old folklore, chasing down rumors of sightings. People think I'm crazy, obsessed with some backwoods myth. Maybe I am, but I know the truth. And every year, when Halloween rolls around, I find myself thinking about that night, about the howl that still haunts my dreams, about the eyes watching me from the darkness. So, let me ask you this. The next time you're in the woods and you hear a twig snap behind you or catch a glimpse of movement just beyond the tree line, what will you do? Will you tell yourself it's just your imagination? Or will you remember my story and wonder, what if? Because the Dogman is out there, I know it. And someday, someone else will have a story like mine to tell. I just hope they live to tell it.
And so, my beloved audience, we've reached the end of our bone-chilling journey through the Appalachian wilderness. A park ranger's encounter with the impossible, a battle for survival against a creature of myth, and a night that forever changed one man's perception of reality. But I ask you, dear viewers, what lurks in the shadows of your local forests? Have you ever heard a howl that made your blood run cold? If so, share your terrifying tales in the comments below. And don't forget to click that like button and sink your teeth into that subscribe button for more dark tales. Until next time, sweet screams, my darlings. And remember, when the full moon rises and the wind whispers through the trees, some legends are better left undisturbed.